So listen, if you're struggling through a low point in your business right now, or you're trying to figure out how to pivot in your business, if you've ever felt discouraged, or if you're feeling that right now, if you might be feeling overwhelmed handling all of the uncertainties in your business, you are not alone. You are in the right place. I am Jon Keel, and I'm really excited to sit down with three very impressive entrepreneurs who have fought through the same battles, and they have gone through the journey of pivoting in their business. They have experienced all of the same common negative thinking or negative emotions, and they have come on the other side. So welcome. I'm here to talk with Stanley Greene, Marvin Epstein, and Jon Keel. So welcome, gentlemen.
My pleasure.
Good to be
Thank
here.
you for having us.
Yes, absolutely. So just to tell the audience a little bit more about each of you, I'm just going to kind of stagger the introductions. I'd love to know, I've got a bunch of questions. Today we're going to be talking about really when you first started your business. What did it look like when you first started? What does it look like now? We're going to talk about what happened in your business that you had to decide to make a pivot. And what was that journey like? What did you try that didn't work? What did you try that ultimately did help you make that pivot and make it successfully? So our audience can learn from the collective wisdom of others who we're going to share with today. Marvin Epstein. Marvin is a serial entrepreneur. He is co-founder of karmainternational.com and partner in beverlyhillspublishing.com. So he is Karma International, what they do is an exclusive private membership organization dedicated to connecting exceptional and inspirational entrepreneurs, both socially and professionally. So just to tell you a little bit about Marvin's background, he started in IAT Capital. Actually, I should say he started IAT Capital, a business that allowed him to work with fellow entrepreneurs in the areas of finance, media, hospitality, health and wellness, as well as a film production company, Pure Media Studio. I think that's pretty cool. I actually had a live performance production company at one time. But anyway, so Marvin is a TED Talk speaker, author, and philanthropist. He believes in the power of who you are not and what you do. Who you are and not what you do. All right. So to take it away, Marvin, talk to us about when did you start your business and what did it look like in the beginning?
Well, first of all, thank you, Yoon, and Stan and John. It's a pleasure to be on a panel with you both. We started Karma in 2005, 2006. And the focus was, I was just coming out of, I guess you would call it more traditional finance in the hedge fund world. And what I realized in that industry, for the most part, was more about what you do. And when I skipped over the who you are, I realized there were some pitfalls in knowing some of the character of some of the individuals that I was associated in working with. And I realized because of the way I was wired and because of what was going to make me successful, I was looking at seeing people that were going to be people I wanted to get along with, people I respected, people I cared about. And fortunately, I met a gentleman, Eric Stotz, and he's the original founder of Karma International. And when we started talking about this, it was very clear to me that his focus was more about who you are than what you do. So it's more about the character of the person, the reputation of the person, the ethos and the soul of the person, than it is the project or the deal or the transaction. And as all of us on camera know, we've all been involved in multiple deals and multiple transactions. The majority of our success is because of the relationship that we built with the people on the other side. So the one thing that was really important to me going into the next venture was knowing that these are people I really cared about, I respected, I wanted to be around, in a relationship way. And then we could talk about the business side. So we became an event-based driven venue in different chapters throughout the country. And the idea was to meet socially, to gather, to get to meet people and get an idea of who they are. And, as I say, what their table manners are, to make sure there's not a food fight when you get into a business transaction. So
I love that.
Fortunately, been a very big success from the standpoint of all these entrepreneurs that are reputation based, and people want to be around these people, not just because of their success in business, but because of who they are.
That message alone, Marvin, is really going to help a lot of people, just to have that refreshing reminder that if your business is kind of on a low point right now, a lot of people are associating that as your identity. And to what you said, and what your business is about, is spreading that message. It's about who you are. And that's such a timely message for so many people right now, to dig into that. That's your identity, and not what you do, and not what your business does. I love that. Love that. Jon, I'm curious about your business, and just to introduce Jon Keel to everybody. He founded improvedtogether.com in 1997. He has developed a reputation as a results-oriented business advisor firm, and he has helped over 1,300 businesses in 85 niches. That's tremendous. He's helped them increase the revenue since 1997. So he has co-developed Xavier University MBA. It's an MBA e-business program where he taught online marketing and e-commerce for 4 years. But in early 2022, so I love this because it's recent, he focused solely on LinkedIn. So I can't wait to hear about your pivot story. So he provides a SaaS product that increases post exposure and engagement. So he teaches, he trains, he coaches, mentors, and it also includes corporate workshops. Jon is a frequent speaker to audiences about performance-based marketing. He's written several books, numerous articles. He co-developed the first pay-per-click search engine bid management software, and wrote the first book on pay-per-click search engines called Instant Website Traffic. Very cool. I'd love to learn more about that. And his recent book collaboration is Success Secrets of Entrepreneurs, published in April of 2022. And Jon resides in Dublin, Ohio with his wife, Colleen, of 50 years. Congratulations on, wow, so many questions. Congratulations on 50 years. So Jon, we'd love to hear. So you started your business in 1997, and tell us a little bit about what it looked like in the beginning.
Yeah, I'm in my third career, actually. And the first business I went to work for and ended up owning and running, I sold in 1995, basically to save my family. I had been very, very successful, sold several $100 million worth of equipment from my engineering background, and discovered the internet in 97 and thought that would be a great tool for small business, because I'm passionate that small business people and small businesses are the future of the world's economy. I believe it's not big business. And I just said, I'm embarked on a journey of 25 years to help small businesses grow and increase revenue. And we had a lot of success doing that until March 1st of 2020.
Gee, I wonder what happened then.
Whole long story, but I've learned over the years, because I really learned and executed marketing, online marketing, offline marketing, and several mentors told me early on, the numbers never lie. I find many entrepreneurs, many business people fool themselves to think, well, it's going to get better, and it may, but in my case, the numbers, I took a 90% drop in revenue in 2020.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's a big hit.
And because things just stopped.
Right.
And I knew I needed to do something different. So that's where I added the LinkedIn expertise. And that's just been taking off and exploding, quite frankly.
So from 97 to 2020, you had a thriving solo practice business as a business advisor.
Yes.
So that's what your business looked like before.
That's what it looked like before.
Okay. Then moving to hearing Stanley's story, Stanley Greene is the founder of powerthinkingcorp.com. He offers global resilience training and exercises that give you the knowledge and ability to retrain your brain, which is a great fit for today's topic. So his training is based on over 30 years of scientific research, Clients include insurance giant Aflac, media powerhouse Comcast, and organizations throughout China and Japan as well. So this is what you teach. Is this the business you always started, Stanley? Tell us a little bit about that, when you started it and what did it look like in the beginning?
Well, in doing what I'm doing, and thank you very much. Really proud to be here and in such good company with Jon and Marvin. So I really appreciate this opportunity. I guess the company that I started, Power Thinking, started in 2011, but it is really the culmination of all of the things that have happened in my lifetime, from as a young child, and having my mother go through a separation with dad leaving, and the bouncing back that she had to do personally, and financially, playing in sports, and actually failing when I used to watch basketball games before class in 8th grade, and one day they were shorthanded, and they put me in the game, and they said, "Come on in," and I told them I couldn't play. They didn't know how to play. They put me in anyway, and I just failed miserably. And that drove me to bounce back and learn the game, and I became a varsity player at the University of Pennsylvania for an NBA Hall of Fame coach, Chuck Daly. And then moving on in business, taking on underperforming organizations, focusing on the people and their mindset, trying to working to turn them around. And as we did that, and we made them more optimistic and made them more solutions focused and more collaborative, the results, just went through the roof. Going through other business adversities, where after our cable company, I was working in telecom cable, I was a vice president of Verizon. But in 2000, as Jon remembers, we had the dot-com bubble. I took over an internet company that was burning $3 million of cash a month.
Holy cow.
And the thought was, more money would be, coming in because it's a .com, and then all of a sudden the .com, as Marvin would know, the venture capitalist is like, whoa, wait a minute, this isn't going to work anymore. You can't just say you're a .com and get tens of millions of dollars. And that was all over. And here I am with a company. I raised 11 million in 3 weeks, and we had to figure out a way with 117 employees to get through. And I had to lay off 100 of those 117, pivot, find a different model, and we positioned for broadband. But from company to company, since synthetic turf, which was building turf fields, and then we're hit in 2008, with the big recession. What I learned was that it didn't matter what school you attended, or what your family background was, and how, if you inherited tons of money. What really matters is whether you have what it takes to bounce back from setbacks. Because the one thing we all have in common, and I found this when I traveled to China and Tokyo to teach this, was that we have all had crushing adversity. The question is, how fast can we bounce back? Ultimately, most of us bounce back, but can we bounce back faster? And so when I came across this company called Reflective Learning that had the intellectual property rights material that came out of the University of Pennsylvania's Positive Psychology Center, I thought, oh my goodness, they're teaching this stuff that I've pretty much experienced my entire life. And ultimately, I was able to buy the company. We had to pivot, because the model that they had wasn't working. And that led to what we do today with Power Thinking, helping people to tap into the power that we all have to bounce back from life's adversities.
Wow. I love that. And boy, do people need that now more than ever, Stanley, as you have seen. So what was the most recent pivot that you made in your business? Was it the start of your business, or have you made
No, the most recent pivot was at the start. We acquired a company that built 2 6-hour online courses, great courses, great content taught by the professors and researchers that did all of the work around this. One course for teens, one for adults. And so I thought, okay, well, they just did a poor job marketing. That's why they failed. They were trying to market this to companies for their employees. Hey, company, wouldn't you want more resilient people? Because if they're more resilient, your results are going to be better. It just didn't work. The investors, as Marvin could identify with, they said, okay, you know what? It's been too long. We put too much money into it. Yeah, we're done. We're out. I came in and bought it. But I made the mistake of just trying to do the same thing. I thought, okay, well, I'm a better salesperson, so I think I can get this done. And it just didn't work. And so it was only about 5 years ago that I realized that I needed to pivot. Actually, a vice president at Comcast, their Comcast University, the Learning Center, after hearing me present and so forth, and then taking the online course, he said, wait, Stan, you can do this yourself. You need to scrap that course. And that was very tough for me. I know that a lot of money was dumped into it. It was a great course, but people just didn't get through it for some reason. And that's when I had to make the pivot and find a different way. And ultimately, what it led to was these weekly calls where we would present the material consistently, and over a 3-month period or so, people would actually, have a shift. Their brains, they would retrain their brains so that they would recognize when they're falling into thinking traps, when they may be beating themselves up too much, or they're blaming others too much, or they're mind reading. It was just amazing how effective this has been.
Wow. So your pivot was, you realized that the delivery mechanism was to build a business around courses. And of course, we hear that all the time, especially in the last 5 years, how you need to create a course-based business, passive income, blah, blah, blah. Right. But you just found it wasn't really being effective. So now you're doing weekly calls. And did you pivot anywhere else as far as the delivery? Are they still getting a course? Or are they getting anything else?
I mean, I have a course for my membership. So we invite people to the calls at no cost. And if they want, additional benefits, access to all the recorded calls and videos that we share, the 2-hour course that I actually put together, then they pay $9.95 a month. So the course, here's what we recognize.
I want to clarify, they pay $9.95 or
$9.95 a month.
Okay. Because my world, it's more like $9.95 as in $1,000 a month,
Yeah. No.
All right.
So we try to make it affordable for everyone. There's
no
yeah,
barrier. That's nothing.
No, it's nothing. So the what we do is we recognize that with courses, I can do courses and do well. I mean, so that's not the issue. My goal is to help people to transform.
Yes.
So if I just want to make money selling courses, I can do that and do fine. But the people ultimately wouldn't get the benefit. This is not about knowledge. This is about getting people to change, to challenge their beliefs, being able to recognize deep rooted beliefs. So that's a process. It's a transformation process. And I found that being instructor-led on a weekly basis, keeping it short, only 30 minutes, has been very effective. So again, if I wanted to just make money, I'd sell courses all day long. But I know that people wouldn't change because they take the course and they go, okay, I know everything there is to know about resilience. They drive on the highway, somebody cuts them off and they get angry and, put up the finger. So I know that we haven't accomplished anything. But with what we do, people have changed. They've reduced the negative emotion. They bounce back faster. I have tremendous testimonials. And so.
So you making that pivot, Stanley, did that just come from yourself? Was that an idea that you just had one day, or did you go through a process that helped you identify that's the pivot I'm going to make?
No, I mean, I wasn't smart enough to do that, unfortunately. I couldn't figure it out myself. It just stumbled into it. I was doing a pilot for Aflac. I actually joined Aflac 5 years ago with all the things that I've done. Joined them as a commission-only salesperson. I've never done that in my life. I've led sales teams, created sales teams. You could always say, okay, how are you doing? But what's your pipeline look like? But never did it myself. And I did it in part because I wanted to understand what they go through and see if there was an application. We found that there was an application for what I do, because I thought, wow, there's a mental battle that you have to win every day as an entrepreneur, as a commission
Yes.
salesperson, because you're faced with rejection. You talk about bouncing back. After every phone call, it's about you have to bounce back and keep pushing.
Yes.
And we piloted the program in central Pennsylvania. Now it's available to half the new associates it's available to new associates in half the state of Pennsylvania. And so we tried this pilot where I was doing a lot of face-to-face. I was going out with people and helping them. And actually, it was one of the regional sales coordinator that suggested that I supplement that with phone calls. And I thought, okay, do that,
Right.
weekly calls. And that turned out to be the thing that worked.
Huh. I love that. So I think that what I'm hearing from your story that our audience could consider taking away would be to really pay attention to ideas and suggestions that other people have. And those other people might be in the form of, hey, maybe I have to go out and get a gig somewhere else as a side hustle, or pick up a commission only situation, or maybe that suggestion is coming from a friend, a colleague. But what you did is you really paid attention to his suggestion and you ran with it, and you weren't afraid. You were coachable, right? And that's what I'm taking away from your story, that our audience can think about, well, I don't even know how to make a pivot. I don't even know what I would change. So Jon, talk to us about your process. How did you come up with the idea of, all right, well, clearly we've been hit. The pandemic has really hit a lot of businesses. How did you come up with the idea where to pivot in your business?
I was in a conversation, and thanks so much for that, Stan, because a part of the last 35 years of my career has been being involved with people that are much smarter than I am. I'm not the smartest guy in the room. I just hang out with them. And that's been instrumental through association and mastermind groups, coaching, mentoring. I've paid for coaches for 35 years because I can't do it on my own. Not smart enough. But when I saw what was happening, I mean, things basically shut down.
Yeah.
And it was a real mental thing I had to overcome, because I've been very, very successful over 25 years in helping businesses increase revenue. I know the online world, and the things I've been doing for 25 years just weren't working anymore. Again, the numbers don't lie. And in a conversation with a friend of mine in Toronto in early March, he reminded me, I'd been talking to him for 2 years about LinkedIn as a great business-to-business tool. And what I didn't know back then, and what I know now, is that 99% of LinkedIn's 850 million users use it ineffectively. This is per LinkedIn, not me. And that's interesting. And they asked me a couple questions, and we ascertained very quickly that I wasn't using it effectively. And he introduced me to some people in the UK who had developed a software that dramatically increases LinkedIn post exposure and engagement. And they had claims. And I'm old enough, again, they call me the old dog with new tricks. I've been around a long time, and I've heard it all. I don't believe things necessarily. So I started using it. I started trying it. And all of a sudden, I saw it was like I had died and gone to heaven with the results I was getting. I kept trying it, kept using it, got the same results. So I just scheduled a Zoom call with the owner of the business and said, we don't know each other, but this is a great tool. I'd love to take this because I have a great network here in the States. And he said, well, I'm going to expand through white label partners, people who will have access to the software. And I picked my 4. And by the way, I wasn't one of them. And again, we didn't know each other. And I said, well, that's great for them, but what about me? And he said, well, I've checked you out. You have an excellent reputation, long time in the marketplace. Would you like to be number 5? Now I'm slow sometimes, but I'm not stupid. And I said, when do we get started? So I launched that SaaS product under the big umbrella of improved results, improved together, 2 businesses in August. And it began to take off. And again, because people don't, in this particular mechanism of LinkedIn, the platform of LinkedIn, people don't use it effectively. And most people are very, very frustrated. So I added to that then, not only having the access to the software as a SaaS product, but teaching. And so I do a monthly free 3 1-hour sessions teaching of all things LinkedIn, because LinkedIn is changing so dramatically fast. And they do a good job of incorporating new changes. They do a very poor job, I believe, of telling anybody about them. I happen to be with some guys who knows what's going on. I listen to them, and I use what I call the swipe and deploy method. I take the information I get from them, study it a little bit, and then share it with my network. And again, I'm not that smart a guy. Like Stan says, I listen very, very, very well.
I love that. And there's a lot of people who went through that same exact journey as you that I speak to, right? And they've been doing very well, had a successful 25, 30 plus year career as an entrepreneur. And then suddenly, the nature of the business that they were in, they've been hit hard. So what I'm hearing from you, Jon, is you went further than thinking about, all right, where can I find the people who are looking for the services I've always sold? But you went out and thought about, well, there's already products out there that are selling, and how can I white label that? And it's still in the wheelhouse of the brand that you have built all these years. You're still helping people grow their business. You're still in the marketing. Yeah, you're still in the marketing game. But you really thought about and were open to, what are some other products that I can white label, just similar to Stan's story of selling another product, Aflac.
And quite frankly, I got off my butt and did something, because my dad told me early on, it's hard to steer a parked car. If all you ever do is think about it, that doesn't do anything. You have to take action.
Yes.
And then mid-course correct as you move forward.
Yes, agreed. A lot. I also speak to a lot of people who are kind of me included, right? I'm sort of this personality trait of analysis paralysis you can get caught up in, and you want to have that perfect strategic plan before you actually decide to go full throttle. And to what you said, you just gave it a try. You were open to it. And here you are now, doing very well with the pivot that you made. And you're still able to serve people who want more, in addition to the LinkedIn program that you have. Marvin, I'm curious now to hear your pivot story. Tell us a little bit more about, again, the most recent pivot that you made, and how did you come up with that? What did you do it about, on your own, or did you have a process that helped you come up with the idea of your most recent pivot?
Oh, thanks, Yoon. And first of all, one of the things that I really appreciate of all of the panelists is the one thing that I think your audience needs to understand is we've used the word listen in every one of our responses to the things that you're asking. And being a good listener is one of the key ingredients. I have an expression, the best teacher is an unconditional student. And I can tell by hearing Stanley's expression and hearing Jon's expression, I mean, it has nothing to do with age, has nothing to do with socioeconomics, has nothing to do with demographics. I want everyone that's watching this to know that there's no better or worse in anything that we're describing, and all the walks of life that we've all come from, different and similar. We just became good listeners and better understood what people were saying. So I think, one message, and by the way, Jon, I'm going to champion your cause, because I love what you're doing with LinkedIn, because I think LinkedIn has got millions of sheep and very few shepherds. And how they did that to get everybody to talk themselves into it, I think, is a story in itself. But I love what he's done to actually capture that and say, look, I'm gonna help you. You're using it, but now it's going to be about value. And what Stan did is taking his athletic career and knowing, I mean, Chuck Daly is an icon in sports, but an icon is a brilliant individual. And we all looked at something and said, if we listen, somebody will share this with us. And we're the same thing as when somebody wants to share something, the most important thing that we can do is listen. And when I made, I guess you could say, the latest pivot, it started after my TED Talk, and when I partnered with a fellow Karma member who had a publishing company, Andrea Albright, and she was the publisher of my book. And when we saw what was going on with what we didn't know how long anything was going to last, where we weren't going to be in person, she already had a business that was remote, and her team was all over the world. So she'd been doing this for years. And I looked at this as, well, you know, it's a short-term thing. We're going to get over this quickly. You know, how could this last more than a year or whatever? And, you know, the answer that she was telling me is, it doesn't matter how long it lasts. If you have something that doesn't affect it and it's successful, then you're going to be successful anyways. And she'd been doing this a lot longer than the pandemic started. So she'd already perfected the concept of having this remote team. And she already understood the publishing industry very, very well. In fact, she's publishing her 27th book this year. So she's definitely like polished as a publisher, a marketer, a brand expert in promotion and PR. And it's all internal. So what I looked at is, you know, because I was obviously one of the proof of concepts to go through this process. When I saw what was happening is, the first thing I said is, you know, I need to do a self-assessment of what I really want to do and who I am and how I want the universe to know me. Because if I'm going to do anything to get out from whatever the hole is, however the hole, deep, wide, whatever, I need to be able to tell somebody who I am. And I need to be able to have a brand that's wrapped around that. So, you know, as we joke about the elevator pitch in the small building, is I want to be able to tell somebody who I am and how I'm valuable and let them come back to me. I have the expression, it's not who you know and what you know, it's what other people think you know. So if other people, and I think Stan is a perfect example, because it sounds like in some of his transitions where it was more about what other people felt he knew, and then he championed that cause. And that's a little bit of a shortcut for your audience is every one of us has skill sets. And if we look at everything we have and basically hit the delete button with everything we don't have, because there's always going to be something we don't have that somebody else has. So we're never 100%, but we are valuable and we are of value. And that self-assessment, that reaching out to people that you care about, that you trust, that you respect, that you want to be closer to, and then find out what it is they're looking for. And it's not a matter of having to train by reading a manual. It's more by being of value to them and them coming back to you and saying, if you're this interested in what I'm doing, then I want to invest the time to make sure you can be one of my advocates. You can be one of my champions. And that's how the relationship with Andrea and I built is, I said, look, you know, we're not doing events right now and things like that. How can I help grow your business? And the comeback is, well, you know, I'm looking for more media relationships. I'm looking for more marketing partnerships and sponsorships. I'm looking to elevate the brand. If you have ways to do that, let's talk about it. So she gave me a roadmap because I opened the door to say, how can I be of value? And I think John and Stan and you and I have had this conversation. The first thing is, if you're of service, then people will find a value. If you're, you know, if you're of self-promotion, then it's just not as valuable. We'll just say it that way. So to be a good listener, to do a self-assessment, and then to reach out to the people that you care about and respect, you're going to get tremendous, tremendous value. And I think everybody, you know, on this panel, you know, has created such an amazing network, more because we've all given value to someone and somebody else has realized we're valuable.
I love that. So what I'm hearing from your story, I mean, you shared you shared a lot of stuff right in that segment. But one thing is you are open to what does that look like for you to help that person. First, you started even wanting to show up, wanting to help that person that you're speaking with, instead of I'm here to try to sell you the services, the preconceived services that I already have. And instead of doing it that way, you just showed up with a heart to help, and you didn't limit Andrea with answering, okay, well, I can help you through XYZ services we already offer. And to me, it sounds like you did really the same thing as Jon with white labeling. But in Andrea's case, she didn't use the word white labeling. She used the word partners and what that looked like for her. So they've got some similarities, but I love that. So just in pivot and exploring, people who are trying to explore, where can you make a pivot in your business to get you back on track? And it's being open to hearing what others are saying. It's also showing up with a heart to help, not being married to that type of help must look like the services you sell, being open to what those multiple revenue streams could look like. And really that ultimately it starts with the heart to help. I love that. And to what you shared earlier too, Marvin, you mentioned about your TED Talk, and I watched your TED Talk. I loved it. Loved your talk about humility. And I want to use this as a segue to our next question, because it is our perspective on interpreting the challenges that we're in, the situation that you might be in. So if you're going through a tough time in your business, I think sometimes God just uses hard times to bring us some more humility to your message. So if you've had decades of crazy success, it's kind of easy to get puffed up and sort of stink of pride. And nobody's attracted to that, And so, hey, perhaps I really do believe God can use our mess to end up being our message. And your message with your humility TED Talk was wonderful. So if all else, if that's the only thing our struggles are crafting in us or cultivating in us, is just kind of making us into more humble people with a heart, and not to forget that we're here to help and we're here to serve. And I loved your tip about doing an assessment, just doing a deep dive in who you are, what drives you, what really matters, what kind of an impact do you want to make for people, and starting there to decide and discover where you could pivot next in your business. But the reason why, okay, so going back to humility and going back to your TED Talk, I want to have each of you go back to really where you had the darkest thoughts, as far as the head trash, the doubt, the second guessing, the overwhelmed, discouraged. I don't know. Have you ever struggled with discouragement at any point in your entrepreneurial journey? So Stan, I know you teach this, but I'm curious, take us back to when was the point you yourself struggled with those negative thoughts and emotions, and just tell us how you felt back then, and how did you what were the first steps that helped you get out of that and retraining your brain?
Well, there's been a number of occasions where, unfortunately, in society, we certainly praise success and those who are quote unquote successful, and what we don't realize is that those same folks that we are, praising, have gone through tough times as well, and that's somehow we have to figure out how to change that. And I think with the more talk about mental well-being and mental health, I think that's starting to happen, that people are realizing that there's a ton of people out there who are have had challenges from time to time, or who are having challenges as we speak, and going through those dark times. And so we used to frown upon that. It's like, oh, I feel bad for you, but I want to be successful. So but so for me, I took over a company. I was a VP at Bell Atlantic, but I wanted to get back into more entrepreneurial environments where I had worked, like in cable, and so I actually left Bell Atlantic at that time. It was now Verizon, but I left them to be the president of a music video channel that competed against MTV. It was called The Box, and they actually, back in the mid '90s or so, they had almost like music videos on demand. It was like a video jukebox. The original name was Video Jukebox Network, and they had been struggling. They were losing markets because of the types of videos that they were playing. Back in the '90s, it was the gangster rap, but those young people loved it, and they could order those videos over the phone or through a 900 number and request them, and it come on the TV screen. But the community was up in arms, and they pressured cable systems to get rid of the channel, and they did in New York, which is a major market, DC, and the company was in a tailspin. I made a pitch to the board that I can come in and save that company, and the company, which was then the largest cable operator, called TCI, that was going to buy them, and did the due diligence and backed off. I said, I can get suitors back to the table in 6 months. And so I came in, and in that 6-month period, did what most folks thought was impossible string of things in the strategy that we put in place to differentiate it. And but the problem was, when I came in as the president of Box USA, the person that kind of screwed up the company, the board was, for whatever reason, felt that would keep him as a CEO, and I still had to report to the guy. I arranged for the meeting with the large company to come back to the table, and we had a big presentation. After my 6 months or so, they agreed to take another look at the company, and then I was out. They were dealing with the CEO, had secret meetings with them, and announced the merger 30 days after that meeting. And then a few months later, before my stock options were to be vested, he terminated my contract at our board meeting. I'm on a phone board meeting, and my contract was terminated. I was absolutely devastated. My wife said she said she thought I was depressed, and I'd never heard that word before. And I thought, me? Depressed? And she said, yeah, I think you're depressed. And, it was tough, because I would talk about it all the time. And I apologize, folks. I thought this stuff was behind me, but you asked me to talk.
Yes, I really appreciate you being
really tough.
transparent.
But the consolation was, I came into another company. I created a news channel in Philadelphia that was bought by Comcast, and I got $1 million out of that. So it was I bounced back and focused. But still, to this day, those stock options, by the way, 3 years later was worth about $3 million. That was a tough one.
So when you were depressed at that time, what was the inner dialogue going on in your head that was feeding how you felt?
Well, the first of all, the emotion, and I always talk about these 5 big negative emotions. There's anger, there's guilt, there's embarrassment, there's sadness, and anxiety. The big one for me was anger. And anger is that we believe that someone did something to you. They violated you, they violated your rights. And so, I had to, mitigate that feeling, that was there for, a couple of years. And I had to, in order to really take on this new challenge, which was starting a news channel, I had to, figure out a way to let go of that anger. So.
Really great stuff. And I'm sure a lot of people who are struggling with that similar anger might not even realize they're struggling with anger, what's deep down inside. So it's just been very helpful for you to articulate that. Jon, I'm curious for you, take us back to a low point. What was a negative thought that kept hounding you in a low point you've had that you believed back then?
Well, I went through a metamorphosis in my life, a transformation in my life 30 years ago, when my marriage was in poor shape, when I hadn't been married 50 years. And it was all, for me, it was all faith-based. And if it weren't for that, I don't know what I would have done. But the low point, and what I concluded going through that process was, the head trash, all that stuff, the way I used to talk to myself verbally. My wife would leave the room. She said, you wouldn't talk to your worst enemy the way you talk to yourself. And I have found, and many people don't realize, think about it, that when you speak bad stuff, the first person to hear it is you, because your ears are the nearest to your mouth. And the mind does not know the difference between the truth and a lie. So when I speak lies, things that aren't true, that just gets fed right in, and then just over and over and over again. But I'm going back now about 3 years ago, I'd gone through a lot of that already in terms of the way I speak to myself. And I didn't have any negative feelings about that. It was disappointment that I wasn't doing what I knew I was capable of doing, or seeing the results that I knew I was capable of doing. And just, I guess, again, it was a faith that just kind of kept me going. Because I do a thing every morning. I call it my Jon time. I spend an hour. I go analog before I go digital.
I like that.
And a lot of that is getting my head straight for the day. For me, once I get online, it's over. The day's over in terms of accomplishing things. So I kind of set myself up every day, looking for success, if you will, being able to come through the disappointments that will occur during the day. I can't remember, Marvin, whether it was you or Stan that said, crap's going to happen. It's called life. Deal with it. You have to learn to deal with it. And a lot of that is emotional intelligence, which I've studied a lot on the last 20 years. And I just don't let crap get me down. And that just didn't come overnight. I had to work through that over several years of really doing a lot of reading and studying and continuing to speak the right words to myself, both verbally and internally.
I love that. So you go analog before you go digital, and in that process, that your morning routine, you're spending that time just being aware of what are the thoughts that you're allowing to come into your mind, and what are the positive thoughts that you are choosing to engage in.
And the other thing I do, I'll just show you, I keep a journal, and I don't have all the answers. Most days I don't have all the answers, and I write the questions down. And so I have found that maybe not right away, a week, two later, my subconscious will do its work. The subconscious is working 24/7. And so the subconscious will process and come back, and I'll get answers, and they come to me.
I love that, when you're just sitting still, being mindful and self-aware.
Yep.
You have those better thoughts, those more positive, empowering thoughts that come to you. So I'd love to share, or I'd love to have Marvin share next, but before you share, it just made me think, Jon, of my own example. I had struggled starting my coaching business because I started it, didn't realize at the time I was starting it in the recession of 2007, 2008. I had sold my last three businesses. I sold all of them in 2006. And at that point, I've had 4 businesses under my belt and 30 to 80 people on my payroll. So I thought, how hard could it be to start a coaching business? And I started the recession, and I'm telling you, it was, out of all the businesses, it was the hardest one I started. And it put me in a lot of head trash. One of the things that I realized later that I didn't realize in the moment that I was saying to myself is I started thinking, gosh, I should be further along. I'm more advanced than this. And I would say things to myself like, I lost my Midas touch. Why is nothing working for me, or something to those effects, right? And it wasn't until after actually I hired a coach. I hired a life coach, and she was wonderful, being able to just let me talk and articulate and giving me some feedback. And one thing she pointed out, I didn't realize at the time that I was doing. She said, "Well, you are choosing to believe that the thoughts that you have, you're saying, you lost your Midas touch. You're believing that, and when you believe that, that's when you suffer, and it just continues to propagate more." And it just clicked, So the thing that was helpful for me was it took me a long time to be self-aware of what are the destructive thoughts that keep playing in my mind. And it took somebody else. So what I had to do was, because I didn't get to that awareness quick enough by myself, I had to go seek help. And for that person to actually give me the feedback, wow, you really beat yourself up. I said, really? I do? I didn't realize I did that. And for her to feed back the kind of inner dialogue that I was obviously having with myself. And so that really, it felt like it freed me to then just say, now you can move forward and say, you know what? I'm not going to choose to believe that. I'm going to believe this instead. And writing down, and much like yourself, Jon, just journaling and writing down what are the truths I'm going to choose to believe, and what are the reoccurring lies that I seem to be susceptible to keep listening to, that I have to actually write down and say, I do not believe this. This is a lie. So that exercise was definitely helpful for me. Marvin, how about yourself? Do you have a specific inner dialogue that, just would send you in a season of discouragement? And what was that, to perhaps maybe our listeners have that same inner dialogue going on right now?
Well, I think to keep it brief for you, I think in my early 20s, I was sold on, the excitement and the enthusiasm and the opportunity to be a part of something that I was excited about, and didn't do a whole lot of research on the person. And unfortunately, it ended up costing me and a couple of family members a lot of money and a lot of heartache. And I was so embarrassed that I didn't want to tell my family what happened, that I literally just said to myself, now it comes down to this is truth time. This is how well can you defend yourself, and what are the tools you have? So I literally just started looking anywhere that I could to find a position that would get me to pay rent for the next month. And I didn't really care what it was, because I'm going to make myself qualified by what they need. I know I'm not going to need to be a lawyer or a doctor in 30 days. So I'm not worried that I have to go to a training, but whatever training is, I'm just going to tell them exactly what I need from them, and they're going to tell me how I get to do this. So I'm going to be solution oriented. And the one thing that I've come to realize is, I have an expression: the universe does not reward strangers. So if you connect with someone and they feel like you're going to be of value to them, they will do more for you than somebody would that just looks at your resume. So I literally went in and I took several interviews, and every one of them I told the same thing. I said, my goal is, based on what I read you're offering, I need to make this much money in 30 days. If you promise me to do this, I will do everything I need to do to make sure I'm your next champion and testimonial. And so I ended up doing direct sales. I wore a chef's outfit. I went door to door and sold restaurant subscriptions. And what I did is I took my marketing hat and I took my survival hat and said, if I go door to door one at a time, I can sell one at a time. But if I go to the health clubs and the insurance companies, thank you, Stanley Affleck, and other companies that have, brokerage houses and real estate, mortgage brokers that have all these people in one office. And then what I want to do is I want to get my foot in the door to be able to present it to the person that's in charge. And instead of buying one, they'll buy several. And instead of using the word buying, I'm going to say, this is a value that I want to provide you. Tell me how this becomes a value. Because everything in my mindset was, when I go home tonight, I need to know that I was productive and I was successful and I was rewarded. And every day I'd put a tally sheet to say, I know what I need to get to dollar figure to be able to pay this rent. And it wasn't so much a it was financially motivated, but it was motivated because I felt like this was a test. I didn't look at this as a self-pity conversation, because if that was the case, I would have told my parents what happened. I looked at it as like, this is my test. This is my journey. And now it's my turn to perform. And how can I do this? How do I prove it to myself? And I think, with Jon and Stan and you and all the things that we're telling the audience is, all these things are internal. If you mentally prepare yourself first to say, what is it that I can do? What is it that I can provide value for? And how badly do I need it? That's how we find a way to succeed. And in my story and everybody's story that I've heard, it's always been those moments that have said, internally, I know I can do this. So first we have to prepare ourselves mentally to say, I'm ready to go to battle, whatever the battle is. And I just need to know what I need to do as the end goal. And however I get there, I want to be able to keep offering value for somebody to want to take a chance on me. And the end result of this business, I ended up becoming their regional sales manager.
I love that. I love that. And one of the things you shared really resonated with me, Marvin, when you said this is a test, because those couple of words, 4 words, has often been, when I've had rough patches throughout my career, those 4 words would often just snap me right back out, just to remind myself. And I would just put it on Post-it stickers. I always meant to get it on a bracelet, but I didn't ever get that far. But just key words like this is a test would snap me out of it and say, oh, this is a test. Okay, stop that sinking thinking kind of stuff. So I love that. So as we wrap up, this has been such a refreshing conversation, because you've all been so authentic, transparent, sharing from your low points, your high points, your low points. I mean, it's a journey, and just like life, there's ups and downs. And I just am so grateful for your candid honesty and the real tips that you've shared that others can take away from. So in closing, I just want to ask each of you to share one piece of advice, because my firm belief is encouragement is oxygen to the soul. And my heart is that this conversation would be a huge encouragement for other entrepreneurs out there. If you just had one short message to share, to wrap things up, to encourage our listeners, what would that be? Jon, can you share something to encourage our listeners?
In Churchill's words in his graduation speech at Eton, I believe it was, he said, never, never, never quit. That was it.
Love it. Get that on a bracelet. Stan, do you have something short as to wrap up our words of encouragement?
Sure. Reaching out for help is a strength and not a weakness. It is absolutely a strength.
Yes. You do not need to know everything. Marvin?
I would say simply, we all have a value, and there's always one person that can benefit from our value.
I love it. You are valued. Yes. Everybody does have their own superpowers to share. My message would be to say that, for those listening, you're not alone. And so if you're running your business alone, you got to get with other people. So you can be in business for yourself, but please don't be in business by yourself. So thank you for today's episode. And I'd love to hear people share your comments. What were some key nuggets that you got out of today's roundtable discussion? And what would you like to add to this conversation? So thanks for joining in today's discussion. We talked about pivoting in your business and winning the battle of the mind. So again, we have Marvin Epstein, Jon Keel, and Stanley Greene. I'll put their contact information and their websites below where you can reach out to them to get to know them better. All right. Thanks again, everybody. See you next time.
Thank you. Good to be with you all.
Thank you.
Enjoy.